All right, Kate, we're live. Jump in whenever you want.
Okay, so thank you guys for joining us. Katrina was going to frame up the conversation today and then throw it to me as the coworker extraordinaire that we're going to use as the person to bounce off of today. So Katrina, can you explain
Sure.
why you felt like this webinar would be important for people?
Yes. So Gestalt Language Protocol is something that Turnkey has been using for way more than a decade. We first were exposed to it when I was the chairperson of the Virginia Council of CEOs. And that is a nonprofit that is purely there. Their mission is to connect CEOs so they perform better at work and live better lives. CEO job is very lonely with a lot of stress. And this particular way to communicate with each other helped people be together without causing a rash, because you put 30 or 40 CEOs in a room together and everybody wants to be in charge. So they had to develop a way for people to exchange information without, chaos reigning. So that is where it came from. Young Presidents Organization and the Entrepreneurs Organization both use this protocol with leadership as well. The cool thing is, though, it works everywhere. I learned it with the Virginia Council of CEOs, but I quickly began to use it with my family because it simply makes life better to do this. A lot less stress on me and on others. And my husband quit accusing me of trying to CEO him all the time. So that was a positive outcome. So that's what it is. And Kate is going to teach us how to use it. And I think you'll enjoy this.
All right, so before we jump in, I'm in presentation mode on my slides, which means I can see nothing, which means Katrina is going to be our chat monitor today. What we wanted to start out with was asking you guys to put in the chat where you are, your city, and then what made you interested in joining today. For example, you might be experiencing some tension with a coworker currently, or you might want to know how to run more efficient meetings. Please put in the chat your reason for joining us today and your city. And Katrina's going to call some of them out since, again, I am blind to the chat.
All right, Oregon and Colorado are here, and we're very curious about why each of you are here. What made the description of this particular thing say, yeah, that's something I need in my life? Like, what's going on in your life? Florida is here as well. And, oh, hello, Vilma, one of our beloved friends.
Hi, Vilma.
All right, people are still logging on and commenting.
Yep, so while we wait, as Katrina mentioned, that we do this in a very structured way at Turnkey based on the origins that she already shared with you. And as we did this in a more structured way with our clients and our community that we're building at Turnkey of social good professionals, we realized that we started to use it internally at meetings, and it trickled into our personal lives as well. And it just started to flow really naturally. It helps build stronger connections, build trust. And we wanted to share that method with you in case it helps you in the day-to-day as well. So thank you so much for joining. Katrina, any additional stuff from the chat before we dive in?
We have a Calvin from New York who wanted to expand his listener toolkit. I love that. That's great. Vilma says, I always want to improve how I communicate with others. Listening is key. Tamara says, I work with clients who need assistance with communication skills. Patrick in Chicago. Hi, Patrick. New to my Oregon, always looking to improve communication with colleagues to fuel our mission. Terry Chadwick. Hi, Terry. Trying to be a better communicator. All right.
Love it. Hi, Tamara. Hi, everybody. And by see, I mean, have you here because I can't see anything. But I'm going to dive right into the deck. Thank you all so much for joining today. Here's what we're going to talk about. The psychological principles at play when you give advice versus when you tell a story, how to recognize advice when you hear it or when you say it yourself. You can catch yourself in giving advice. How to give the gift of your experiences that are so valuable and help your audience, the person that you want to share them with. And then how to stop yourself or others from giving advice. So when you've recognized it, how do we intervene and turn the conversation to be a little bit more productive? So first, we'd like to talk with you and set some definitions for level setting on what is advice and what is storytelling. Because the one thing, again, we'd like for you to walk away with today is the ability to discern in your everyday conversations the difference between advice and storytelling, and when people might start to go from one into the other. It can happen very stealthily, very, very stealthily. So what is the summation of our experiences plus our interpretation of those experiences that we then wrap in a beautiful bow for the listener. And we might feel really good when we give advice because we feel like we've done some of that legwork for the listener, and we feel like we're giving them the gift of not having to go through the harsh experiences that you might have experienced in your life, or the just the work through the experience. You're just telling them, here's the conclusion, all of that stuff. Here you go. It's a gift. And what I have found is that think that it is. And we're robbing them of the opportunity to weigh in with their experiences to come to conclusions in this. So advice is your experiences plus your interpretation. Versus stories are compelling because the experience of listening to a story engages some really fun areas of the brain that Katrina is going to get into when we talk a bit about the psychology piece. But you're gonna learn how to properly tell stories today. Stories are when you talk about your experiences and you remove that interpretive lens that makes it advice. All right, so Katrina, reactance and what can happen with advice. This is one of the psychological principles at play and this is what happens when you do it wrong. So we're leading with what can go wrong and why advice is bad. So Katrina?
Certainly. So people have a great need for autonomy, and we have that need both consciously, we know we're having it, and unconsciously, meaning we will perform some behaviors because we're seeking autonomy that we may not realize. So we go to great lengths to preserve our personal autonomy. When people tell us what to do, give us advice, even when we pay them to do so, like people pay us to give them advice sometimes, we actually feel our personal autonomy threatened. We experience what psychologists called reactance. So that feeling that you get when somebody tells you what to do, and you know, yeah, that's probably the right thing to do, it's probably helpful, but you still don't want to do it. That is what you're feeling is reactance. Sometimes you know consciously that it's happening, and sometimes you don't know that it's happening. It's unconscious. And when it happens unconsciously, you will create a story about why your reactance makes sense. You'll figure out a narrative that makes it okay for you to do the wrong thing because somebody told you to do the right thing. That's really crazy and weird, and yet that's how we're built. One of the things that I have noticed in myself is if I say something like, "Hey, you know what? I should go do this, whatever it is. I should make chili for supper." And if someone says, "Yeah, you should do that," I immediately begin to question, "Should I make chili? I'm not sure. Maybe I don't want to make chili now." That is how strong reactance is. You
Is
can
that
even,
spite?
yeah.
Is that Katrina being spiteful, or is that react?
What is it?
Don't tell me what to
Exactly.
do.
Exactly. So that is reactance in a nutshell.
Fantastic. And what about the storytelling pieces of what's happening in the brain when storytelling is happening?
Yeah. So the opposite of that reaction, reactance, meaning I'm pulling away, I'm leaning back, is when I'm leaning in and I feel like I'm part of the story. So when someone tells us a story, we hear the story, we hear the emotion, we hear the reactions of that person as they tell their story, and it turns out that we literally feel the same thing. We are equipped with fairly recently discovered mirror neurons. So when we hear a story, we totally hear it and we feel it and we experience it as if we're there. So what that means is that we've dropped all defensiveness. Nobody's telling us what to do. Nobody's threatening your personal autonomy. Instead, we are listening completely open-hearted, open-eared, ready to receive the information and experience it as if we are that person. So the mirror neurons are responsible for that reaction.
Fantastic. All right. So some other psychological principles that might be at play just in day-to-day conversations. There are things that happen when you share an experience and how you feel after experience. Cognitive dissonance is something you guys around. Definition of cognitive dissonance that occurs when two modes of each other. So ideas, attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors. And so what could happen is when you share an experience, you're opening up to a person. So then if you have an attitude of, I don't trust that person, let's just say you have a coworker that you've got some, if you go in and you share something personal about yourself with them, you're more likely to trust them, and you want to avoid that cognitive dissonance. So you as well, because our brains just naturally don't want to have cognitive dissonance. So this is something that might happen. The more you share your experiences in the correct way, that in this protocol way that we're sharing with you today, we're going to get into that in a moment. When you share your experience instead of giving advice, you might find that you start to like the person more. And then also one of my favorites is what happens to the other person when you ask for a favor. So Katrina, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. And we talk about these sorts of things all the time at Turnkey. So if we go fast on something and you need us to like take a step back, what the heck? Cognitive dissonance is a real interesting thing. It's when your body sees your mind sees your body do something that your mind doesn't agree with, and so your mind will change to match what your body just did. And that's what Kate just described. Cognitive dissonance, in that if you share with someone, then you must trust them, right? And that trust is established so quickly. I see some names here who've been with us to our convenings, our on-site things, and we see that community of 20-ish people form almost immediately. And this is one of the reasons, because they have elected to be vulnerable with each other, and therefore they have elected to trust, and they believe in it. It's an unconscious process. So what was it you asked me to talk about for real, Kate? I forgot.
No, thank you so much for adding to that. So what happens to another person when you ask for a favor?
Yeah. So again, cognitive dissonance is at work in this dynamic. When I ask Kate for a favor and she does it for me, like, you would think that would mean I would like Kate more because she did me a favor. But the way our brains work is that of the two of us, Kate will like me more because she said yes to the favor. Because why do you say yes to favors for people? Because you like them, because you trust them, because you want to. So Kate is actually impacted in that exchange more than the person asking for the favor. She likes me more because she did me a favor. Is that crazy? Almost. Yes.
And so that is called the Ben Franklin effect. And he had, this is my elder millennial interpretation of the story, but Ben Franklin had a nemesis. Nemesis, hey, can I borrow that super rare book that you have? I'd really like to read it. And his nemesis started to like Ben more. So that is where it's got the name Ben Franklin effect. So these sorts of things are at play when we're having conversations, and when we're doing favors or sharing an experience. You're really opening up and being vulnerable with the other person. And it does have an impact on both the person doing the sharing and the person receiving the share. Again, only if we avoid making it advice. So how do we make sure we don't cross that line into advice and we stay in storytelling? We do that by maintaining objective testimony. One of the reasons we don't tell people what to do is that our advice is the sum of our experiences. So the basis of my advice to someone else is that experience plus that interpretation that we talked about. So we all do this. But when you add in your interpretation, it might not apply to that person's world. They have more information in the situation. They have different experiences from you that they've lived. And so we want to make sure we remove that interpretive lens completely. We want to just state facts when we're sharing our experiences with a person. So the way we do that is to speak in the past tense. Give as many details as you can. Don't generalize. Feel emotion as you give your share. If this is something that you share with the other person, it's probably going to be of immense value to that person that you're sharing it with. And don't say in my opinion or generalize and say, oh, when that happens, this is what I've done. Because the more specific that you can be, the more the mirror neurons that Katrina talked about are going to be activated. And the more the person's going to actually relate and feel that story with you. When you start to summarize multiple experiences together, it's going to be harder for that person to relate what you're sharing because it isn't specific enough. And then not saying I think or I believe, just stating what happened. One of the things I want to talk about, Katrina touched on it lightly, is, what happens when reactance starts? It's a psychological principle. We know the mumbo jumbo that, everybody talks about. I want you guys to know and be able to feel the physiological things that are happening when reactance is at play. So how to know you are experiencing reactance or you're seeing it in somebody else. You stop feeling heard or understood. Your shoulders go up. We talk about this body language. You lean back and away from the conversation, or you cross your arms in a defensive pose instead of leaning forward. You might actually feel your hackles go up, or you might feel like the conversation is over. If you're doing this correctly, the conversation shouldn't really ever feel over. So those are some of the physiological things that can happen when you are not telling your story and doing these things, speaking in the past tense, feeling your emotion, being detailed. Just because I like to mess with Katrina and I want to make sure she's still awake over there, put in the chat the most recent movie that you watched for me, please.
Oh, you're so tricky.
Just got to mess with you a little bit.
And Kate,
otherwise, what are the perks of doing webinars together?
This is true. This is true. I see a lot of friends on the webinar, and I also noticed that we have a lot of high-level executives here. And so it's interesting to me, and I see one friend from across the pond who is, I wanted to share with you, Kate. She says that she's considering a new role that would require shaping a dysfunctional executive team without direct authority. So in those situations with a lot of high-level executives, when you think about it, each and every day we tell people what to do. It's like a knee-jerk response. We are decision machines, and we will tell people what to do in a heartbeat. And you would think, like, isn't that the fastest way to get it done? But it really doesn't matter. Like whether I'm getting paid to give advice or whether I have paid someone to give me advice, when they communicate with directives, with advice, with opinion, I can't help it. I still react this way. It's just the way we built. Evolutionary psychology has us doing this. This is at the end of the day, we are using a survival technique that was evolved tens of thousands of years ago, and we're using it in the boardroom to react. And that, I read a book recently that the thing that stuck with me, because not much does at this age, the thing that stuck with me is that we only evolve for the past, not for the present and not for the future. So we are not well equipped for getting advice. Back to you, Kate.
Thank you. All right, the gift. So you have shared your experience using objective testimony. At this point to stop and say, and so, and add that interpretation at the end and wrap it up with that beautiful bow and hand it to the person with your interpretive stamp on it. But when you do that, it could feel, it could cause reactance from the recipient. So that and so is an indication for you to kind of catch yourself and go, I'm going from storytelling into advice sharing and I need to stop myself. This can mean a couple of things, and I encourage you to let it happen. This might mean an awkward silence might happen after you stop yourself after your story. This might mean you feel like you stopped in the middle of your sentence because you didn't add a conclusion. Both of those things are actually very positive in this protocol. It helps allow the other person to then take that pause or take that moment at the end of your share to start to think through their experiences and weigh them together to come up with their own conclusion. So we do ask that you do not wrap it up with a bow and give the ugly present, if you will, as we go into the holidays. We ask that you stop yourself at the end of your experience sharing. All right, so up until now, we've talked about, what's good and bad. We've done some level setting on definitions. Now we want to get into how to apply this to more daily life. So when someone shares a challenge with you, let's just say in a meeting or in a boardroom, like Katrina was talking about, and they engage in a conversation with you, and it's clear that they want your input. Note I said input and not advice. What do you do next? So somebody has said something that they have on their plate. What do you do next? And what you do is you ask questions first. And I know all of you probably do this already. You don't jump straight to solution. You want to ask questions and see really where the person is coming from, what they're struggling with, which part, things like that. So the purpose of the questions is not always, or not only, I should say, not only for you to understand where the person is coming from, but it's also for you to sift through the experiences that you have. Because let's face it, everybody on this webinar is deeply experienced and probably can think of 5, 6, 7 things that they could share with this person for any given problem. So what we want to have the clarifying questions do is serve as the ability, that filter for us to know which of the experiences of our life we really want to bring forward. We want to pluck out and bring forward and share with this person using that objective testimony approach. And asking questions can be very tricky. As we mentioned earlier, advice can be very stealthy. The way you ask questions can sometimes be the way you give advice. So here's what I mean by that. A not great question would be XYZ. Have you tried talking with the person to see if you can resolve it on your own? Have you tried going to your boss? Have you tried? That's advice. That's advice. Instead, what you could do is say, what have you tried already? What has worked and what hasn't worked? And other questions like that. So other good questions would be, how does leadership see this challenge? If it's a work-related question, how does your leadership see this? Is the board receptive to this? And then one of our favorite questions at Turnkey is, what will happen if you do nothing? After you've asked clarifying questions and you know which of the stories you have from your past that would be the most relevant and pertinent to the person sharing with you, you then share your story, which again, we talked about how to do that, your objective testimony. And at this point, I would encourage you to share not only what's worked, but also what hasn't worked. So successes and failures. How have you been burned in the past? What happened? So being honest as well with yourself. If you don't have an experience that's really relevant, to say so. And what you can do instead of giving advice arbitrarily and feeling like you have to fill that void in that conversation, what you can do instead is say, I actually don't have any experience with that problem. That might help the person still feel very heard and seen without you having to contrive advice to share with them if you don't have any experiences. Sometimes at this stage, people realize how much advice they give without direct personal experience with that challenge. Mm-hmm. You know, there's always the old wives' tales, for example, if your ear's burning. Like, have you ever experienced your ear burning and that exact thing happened? No, but it's hearsay. People say that that's what happens, so that's the advice that you're given, right? So that might be a pleasant surprise that you have, is that you don't actually have any experience to share. Something that you can do at that point as well is think to your network. Who do you know who's maybe gone through something similar that you can connect the person with? And that way you're still engaging in the conversation with this coworker, and you're still helping experiences that other people have had with that, but you're helping to be a conduit for them finding that connection. Hey, Kate. And of course, get their permission first. I do want to say that. Sure. Get their permission first before you go to other people to find somebody to connect them with. Katrina, do you want to add in?
I did, knowing some of the folks on this call who are in very high level positions and who are charged with not just leading, but teaching. And when you think about what Kate said earlier about how your advice and opinion, that is what you're teaching, but the method is really important. And bringing your advice and opinion to a subordinate as you try and bring them along in their career, without the context, they really don't know what you told them. They won't get it because you've encapsulated it to the point that it's super fast and easy to impart. And they're like, yeah, well, Patrick said, go do this. I'm going to go do it. They don't know why, because they don't have the context for your decision. So even though, are there moments when you just deliver a decision or your opinion and advice and your subordinate goes to do it? Absolutely. I actually did this training for a group of policemen in a county, and they really had a hard time with it. And finally, I realized, I'm like, oh my God, these are guys who are pulling people over, who are toasted behind the wheel. They're making a decision. That is not for this, right? Totally different scenario. Hurricane coming and your biggest event is on the coast of Florida. You're making decisions. We're not doing it this way. But in terms of bringing along subordinates, training, teaching, and establishing relationships, this method works great.
Yeah, fantastic. So we're going to talk a little bit about who the heck we think we are and sharing this with you. And then we're going to put it to the group, and we're going to do a little bit more back and forth with you guys. So just a little bit of history of how we've utilized this protocol to build our social good community. We have had over 2,500 challenges shared with us in the forums that we have and we host that we call convenings and alongside groups. Next week, we're going to be hosting our 33rd in-person convening of thought leaders. We're very excited to have our group of CEOs next week. And currently, as of this moment, we have 20 active alongside groups. We've had over 100 in total since the pandemic started. We have these as a virtual way to practice this protocol with each other. And these groups comprise of CEOs, CFOs, CSOs, CMOs, Cs and Os abound, live streamers, innovation directors, etc. So we absolutely love to hear real challenges that people are facing in their daily lives, what's keeping them up at night. And then we love facilitating folks and the other folks in the group sharing their experiences with each other. It is absolutely a joy for us to do. So as you guys navigate this and you think through your conversations and anywhere that you have some friction interdepartmentally and things like that, we did want to highlight some ways that we can help. These are ways that we've helped our clients in the past. So we can help with facilitating a session or a meeting that you already have on your calendar. If you already have people coming together, we can help to run this training. We have done that virtually and in person, for example, with field staff and volunteers, walk managers. And we've loved doing that in the past because we find, so much of the experiences that so many of the experiences people share are because of direct mission impact. And, you're running your walk out in, wherever city, you're running it that way because you have a son who is mission affected, or you've had a really poignant experience directly with the mission. You want to make sure you're honoring that. That's an amazing thing to learn about your colleagues, peers, coworkers, anybody you have a dotted line or solid line connecting you to. Another way we've done that is with our convening, the in-person retreat style that we host. We have done that for clients in the past. And even, a large national nonprofit, for example, brought together their top 20 or so leaders, and we paired them, the 20 leaders, we paired them with others in the space who would have amazing experiences that we knew could be shared in this format. So we got the benefit of learning more about the team at large, and then also getting some outside perspectives as well. We can also host an alongside group for your ELT for 6 months or whatever time bound you would like to lay on that. We could do 3 groups or not. So noodle on that. If there's ever any way that you think the Turnkey can help, let me know. And I'd be happy to brainstorm that function for you and with you. We've also, something I didn't put on this slide, so we have also helped train national staff in how to do this so that the field would be better receptive to all the experiences that they had to offer, and they didn't feel like they were getting told what to do all of the time by the national office. So it can really help with the dynamics at play across your organization as you do your great mission work. So after that, we want to talk about some examples. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to share a challenge or two. Katrina is going to go through the process with me. She's going to ask me clarifying questions, and then she's going to share an experience. It's entirely made up. No, it's like on whose line is it anyway? The points don't matter. but I'm going to role play just some challenges. And then I also want, as you guys hear this, please put in the chat a real example that you have, so we can also role play that. If you do that, just put some detail in there if you can, and then we'll be able to, I'll pretend that I'm you. And so we might misrepresent a few things, but we hope that taking through the exercise out loud would help you guys understand where we're going with storytelling and not advice giving. So with that, example time. All right, Katrina.
Yes.
You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. I have an underperforming coworker and I don't know what to do about it. We've covered for this person over time. And because right now, we have to fight for every dollar we're fundraising right now. Every organization is experiencing that. And so it's starting to get to the point where we can't keep covering for this coworker. There has to be a change that happens.
Okay, I'm going to start asking questions, and the questions are actually to find out more, but really it's to figure out which of my experiences might be helpful. So if a question sounds weird, it's because I'm trying to figure out which of my stories could be helpful here. All right, Kate. So how long has it been going on since they were hired, or is this something that started later?
It's been going on for about 4 years. And, for the first year, we know that we have a tougher onboarding. We wanted to give this person the benefit of the doubt, but we feel like at this point, it's no longer onboarding or getting up to speed about our unique mission. This is now not meeting the needs of the role.
Okay, so they were hired 4 years ago. That was their start date, or did they move into that role from another position?
That was their start date.
That was their start date. And how long does your organization typically give someone to come to speed, so to speak?
It depends on the role and who their boss is and who you talk to. We don't have a set process.
Okay. And what kind of feedback system do you have for performance?
The only feedback I think this person has gotten is they've been less to do over time.
Okay. That person's superior, what is their performance like? Is that you or someone else?
No, this person is actually in a different department. So I feel like I'm not empowered to do anything about this challenge with this coworker. The political climate is just a little bit messy. And I feel like their boss, who they report to, would react very defensively if I were to approach about this person.
Okay. Do you have a similar set of duties as the person who's leading the underperformer?
No, I actually rely on that. We have very different duties, and I rely on that person conducting their role so that my deliverables can make it out to market.
Okay. Okay. I think I'm ready. If you are ready for my experience.
I'm ready.
Okay. We had an employee, and in this particular case, the employee succeeded for a long time, and then she began to fail, and we couldn't figure out like what's going on. And I was CEO, and what I did about it was I asked everyone to give me the same kind of metrics. Each different department needed to give me the same kind of metrics. And what that forced was that they were forced to actually create some metrics. And what I found is that this person, the root problem is irrelevant. But what I found is that she had simply accepted more and more duties without any performance metrics that reflected those additional duties. So by installing the performance metrics that covered the scope of her job, we were able to react to it. And in that case, what happened was we teased the job apart and made two jobs, one of a much lower skill set and one of a higher skill set. And we were able to judge her performance. And in her case, she succeeded. She became successful because we changed the performance metrics. And what happened to the team is because everyone was expected to give performance metrics, that enabled and forced some change at the management level. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you. Yeah.
Awkward
what did that
landing.
feel like? What did that feel like for you?
You're asking me, and am I still in my persona?
Yes, please.
Okay. What it felt like was frustrating because I just wanted to go tell people what to do, because that's what people like me do. We tell people what to do. But what what happened afterward is that both of my subordinates who were leading other people, both of their performances improved because they were more aware of what was going on in their teams. So at the end of the day, it was fulfilling and uplifting. In the interim, it was frustrating not to just get in there and fix it. But the outcome long term was much better.
Okay. All right. Anything in the chat? Any examples we can jump to?
Oh, people are being shy. I know we've got a problem. Izzy, you want to talk more about a dysfunctional executive team without direct authority? You want to give us a little more, or I can make up the details if you don't. Izzy's like, wait, did I hear my name? I think I heard my name. Okay. Tamara, thank you. Okay, Izzy, go ahead and type in the chat if you're up for it. Tamara, one member of the team does not pull their weight and is disrespectful to others on the team. However, uppermost management does not seem to understand the impact on the current team. Did you get all that, Kate?
I did. So can you take her through the clarifying questions?
Sure. So Tamara, if you could tell me a little bit more about the disrespect and how it manifests. What does that sound like? And Kate, are you being Tamara, or am I really asking Tamara?
Well, if Tamara's comfortable to put it in the chat, that would be great. I can do my best to represent.
Tamara? Okay. So I think I'm gonna be Tamara, and how about you be me? Okay. So here's the way it manifests. I find that people, this one team member frequently talks over other people, interrupts other people, and uses a loud voice. And for example, when we have a brainstorming session, they just don't go well because that person is just sucking up all the air in the room with their personal demeanor, just overbearing and loud, and so the rest of the group leans back.
So, question for you: is this person not pulling their weight in a way where they feel like they're above the tasks that are on their plate, or is it more of they've accepted those are their tasks, they just underperform on the delivering of them?
My sense of it, in my imaginary Tamara world, is that she said, I think you're in the meetings. My sense of it is that he's covering his lack of ability and talent, and he knows it, and he's kind of like a look over here, look at the bird, with his demeanor, so that we don't focus on his performance.
Got it. And what have you tried?
Well, upper management does not seem to recognize the problem, so I don't feel empowered to do anything about it. I'm frustrated.
Okay. And what will happen if nothing changes, if you don't do anything?
That person's behavior is impacting the morale of the team, and people are leaning in less and less and less because they're frustrated and meetings are uncomfortable. So I fear, if we do nothing, I fear losing valuable employees, or at least losing their energy. And that includes me. I'm very uncomfortable as well. And frankly, I'm a little disappointed in my leadership that they don't do something.
Okay. I have been through something similar in the days gone by. Back in 2015, this is in my made-up Tamara world as well. Back in 2015, we had a team that, when on paper, should have been just absolutely crushing it. And we had a toxic person who just wasn't getting the work done, and yet was the squeakiest wheel when it came to meetings. And we started to cancel meetings as much as we could because we knew we wouldn't be heard, and we started to do more offline chats in one-to-one meetings. which meant that the team just wasn't operating on all cylinders. And we were all kind of operating in more silos because we felt like this person was untouchable. They were the sacred cow, if you will, to leadership. And I was at an impasse. I'm not going to lie. I let it happen far longer than I should have. And we lost some key clients out of that. We had some clients who did not renew because this person wasn't checked. And it broke my heart. It absolutely broke my heart because we were all very passionate about what we were delivering as a service and as a tool. And we knew we needed to be better. And so what I did was I went to, I'm a firm believer in, this is my Enneagram type 6 coming out. I'm a firm believer in anything that's really important actually requires a presentation. The more important it is to me, the more I need to present it formally. Boss and did a formal presentation about what I was experiencing and what I saw was happening. And I was open to how they wanted to solve the problem, but I needed to make them extremely aware of what was happening. I went with examples. I went with very specific feedback and asked for help in coming to resolution with this person.
Wow. You know, even though I know Kate was making up that story, I still leaned forward because I wanted to hear it. And that meant that all of my protection, my self-protection fell away because I was listening hard to that story. I didn't feel judged. I didn't feel afraid. I didn't feel diminished in any way. I wanted to hear the end of that story. And I will combine that with all my other experiences to come to a conclusion about what I should do next. And I don't even have to say what that is. All right. Kate, any commentary on that? Izzy has given us some great fodder.
I can say just what the result was of that experience, if it's helpful. We resolved to utilize our project management CRM to make more transparent to everybody who had what on their plate. And this person was actually shamed, I'll put it that way, into better behavior because it was so apparent that this person's workload was so much lighter than everybody else's. And so having that transparent workload helped us to get better behavior. And then over time, we had better work interactions.
Love it. All right. So, Kate, I'm going to tell you Izzy's story. I'll be Izzy.
Okay.
So are you okay sharing back to me?
I'll do my best.
Okay. Do your best. Here we go. So, I'm Izzy. A mix of the challenge that I have is that I am potentially going to be working with a dysfunctional leadership team, and the team is a mix of longer term team members and new hires at the executive level. Historically, it's a very action oriented culture. Sort of think rugged individualism on steroids. Whew. That's scary. And Izzy says, we've been seeing the downsides and the cost of this culture strategically for some time now. The CEO would like to create a role to help this team come together more effectively and foster better alignment through the organization. But this is the exec team who all report to the CEO, hoping this new role can move the team forward out of storming and ultimately figure out the right structure for our new size. But I have to get it done with, or the person who takes the role, sounds like Izzy's questioning it. We have to get to the right structure for our new size, but without direct authority.
Okay. I've got so many questions.
Okay. Izzy, if you want to respond real time, that's great. Otherwise, I'll make it up.
Okay. So I'm curious how many direct reports the CEO has.
I'm going to give Izzy a moment.
And I'm curious about why we being Izzy, think another person is the solution. Does the CEO not feel that the current ELT can resolve this dysfunction itself?
8 people are direct reports to the CEO in this case.
So we'll be adding a 9th then. Right.
Unless Izzy's already on that team, in which case she'll be simply transitioning roles.
Right.
So, all right. Okay. Okay. So I'm gonna assume Izzy's persona. Ask any other questions, and I'll do it.
Okay. Can you tell me what you would grade the strategic plan, the quality of the strategic plan and the adherence to it.
I'm going to give it a high grade because I
Okay.
know Izzy's part of it and I know her. I'm going to give it a high grade, whether the operational plan is fully disseminated through the organization. That's, department dependent.
Okay. Um, all right. Can you also tell me what the last in-person meeting vibe was?
We went to one of those all you can eat meat steakhouses, and it was very, it was full of bravado. People overate like almost like a contest. It was weird. And, there were people who drank too much. And it was just, again, back to that rugged individualist on steroids. Everybody had to be bigger, better, faster than everyone else. People talking over each other all the time. You know, what is that phrase that startups use? Move fast, break things. It's like
Get the
they
meat
just
sweats. I don't know.
yeah, it's just like everybody trying to prove that they are more risk happy than everybody else.
Got it. Okay. I've got an example for a story I can share.
Excellent. Love to hear it. Go ahead.
Okay, so at a previous organization, I was the CEO of a national organization. And when I came into the role, I noticed a lot of dysfunction between the ELT as it existed. Some folks had been promoted within the organization who just had tenure and maybe didn't have the skill set to fill the role, and then weren't really provided the training to get to that. They weren't coached up into the role where the gaps were for them. And then we had some other people who were hired from the outside, and there was a lot of tension between the two groups. We also experienced some generational challenges between some direct reports underneath that level. So we had dysfunction. We had, people who just were saying this is how we've always done it. We had some people saying, but why? Do we have to keep doing it that way still? And then we had people underneath, their teams underneath were picking up on that tension because we weren't in lockstep in every meeting as a leadership team when we were going to the tactical level with our reports. And so I had to do something. And as the leader, we implemented some coaching for each member individually. And then to help keep motivation tied for everybody on each other's success at the ELT level, we actually matrixed their performance assessments of each year. And what we did was the higher up in the organization you are, the more your bonus in your pay is commensurate on the entire organization's success and not your own bucket of responsibility. So the more further down on the org chart you were, the more out in the field you were, the more you were in charge of your own destiny, if you will. So you could get your bonus based on your own performance. In the national chart you were, the more your pay was tied to the rest of the team being successful. That way, it completely changed the dynamic of how the meetings were going because it was a little bit more collaborative over time. It improved 1% every meeting, just a 1% improvement from before every meeting until 6 months to a year later, we were finally collaborative and worked through that because everybody wanted to pay, and I was leading from the top down with this solution. It became part of the narrative that I said in my coaching for the team to do, and I repeated it over and over and over to get everybody on the bus of where I wanted to go. And I will say one person didn't make it through this change. One person really fought back and refused to make any changes whatsoever, and I had to make a tough decision for us to part with that person.
Wow. Thank you for that story, Kate. All right. So what I did not feel was that Kate told me what to do, nor did she expect me to go do what she told her story about. One of the things with telling people what to do is that if I tell Kate what to do or she tells me what to do and then the results are disastrous, what then? What happens to our relationship? things go south. And alternatively, if I tell Kate what to do and then she doesn't go do it, I feel some kind of way about it. Like, that doesn't make me very happy because, like, why does she even ask me if she's not going to take my advice? How many times have we all heard that from our mother, right? So this avoids we don't have to feel that way at all. Again, there's a time for decisions and direction, and there's a time for building relationships and giving people a deeper and better understanding. And we have found the Gestalt Language Protocol is a massive win on that front. Easy to do, hard to maintain discipline, but easy to do, easy to understand. Kate?
Yep. I would like to point out, if you are the person who is sharing in your daily life and the other person you're talking with doesn't know this protocol, and you want to help guide the conversation to get into this protocol, you don't want them to dump advice on you and walk away. What are some ways you can do that, Katrina?
Well, funny thing, my mother's visiting right now. So, and we're all at home together. So the one thing that I try and do is when I get direction, like go do this, or funny story. Last time she was here, she insisted that I needed to have rubber bands in my kitchen drawer. Like, I had nothing against having rubber bands in my kitchen drawer, but the fact that she was so adamant about it, I threw away every rubber band. I'm just like, nope, I'm not going to do it. But what I should have done was this: Mom, tell me about the rubber bands. What is it that's got you on fire about rubber bands? What happened? And that would bring forth the story of why she's like so passionate about having rubber bands in the kitchen. That's a silly one. But in any situation, when someone says, and they're shaking their finger at you and the whole thing, go like, whoa, 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 wow, you got a lot of passion on this. Tell me why. What happened to you that makes you have so much passion? Tell me the story, and just ask for their story. And every time they slip back into this is what you should do. Yeah, I hear you, but tell me, why do you feel that so passionately? What's happened to you that makes you believe this? And you will have done a couple of things. Number one, they will be tremendously flattered that you cared enough to ask. So your relationship will be improved. You'll get better information, much more accurate information, and you can continue to redirect to the real thing. Here's an interesting thing. Sometimes, rarely, but sometimes people don't know why they feel away. They don't know why. They just have come to this conclusion. And when you challenge them on, like, tell me why, if they can't answer it, I think that's a good indication that the information that formed their opinion is outdated, because they won't go back to it. So, tip for living with
Yep.
your mother.
All right. Well, that is everything that we had for you guys today. We hope that this helps guide your daily conversations, how you go about things with your teams at work, and even how you talk with your teenagers at home. We have found that it is really, really impactful, and it's changed how we talk to each other everywhere at Turnkey. So we hope that this was helpful. Thank you for joining us today. We love to see you guys. And let us know after this webinar if you have any specific questions or scenarios you want to talk through with us. We'll help guide you through it if it's helpful.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Terry's mom's coming to visit.
Oh, Terry.
A, God help you. B, use Gestalt. Yeah. Yana, thank you. Enjoyed seeing everyone's name and face on the login. Have a great day, y'all.